New York Post columnist Dave Marcus, who is on the ground in Canada. Dave, what is the very latest about the emergency powers that the leadership there is trying to enact?
Well, they enacted it. About a half an hour ago or an hour ago, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister, held a press conference in which he announced that the Emergency Act, the National Emergency Act, had been invoked. This was over the objection of at least 3 premiers of different provinces, basically like governors, who don't want the federal government to have this Emergency Act in their provinces. So it's a very fluid situation. I have to be honest with you. I'm on the ground here in Ottawa, which is one of the places that's being targeted by these new powers that Trudeau has, and I'm not seeing the emergency. I've been on the streets out here for the last 2 days, and I'm frankly amazed that this kind of thing is being done right now.
Because there's so much to talk about in this. The emergency seems to be that Trudeau, the thin-skinned Trudeau, is embarrassed by this trucker protest. And he's trying to, ironically, he's using emergency powers, which is the very reason that the truckers are protesting. They're protesting the random edict and order, the decrees from on high, and then the truckers being treated like plebes and proles by these wannabe emperors, namely Trudeau. But with these emergency powers being enacted, what are they going to use them for?
I mean, look, it's not entirely clear. I was at a press conference earlier today by one of the leaders of the trucker convoy, who was joined by a former premier of Newfoundland, who was one of the people who created the charter, which is the Canadian Constitution. And look, they basically said if the federal government tries to come in and move us, we're going to hold our ground. So Trudeau says right now he doesn't want to use the military, but they've invoked this act. It's not really clear to anybody right now what's going to happen in the next day or two in terms of trying to move these trucks.
Dave, why not just talk to these truckers? Why not just sit down with them publicly and talk to them?
I don't understand it, Dagan. I really don't. That was a point that was made by Pickford during the press conference, was how are you going to invoke these emergency powers when you haven't even engaged in a conversation? I really believe that had Trudeau simply talked to these people 3 weeks ago, given the fact that Canada, like the rest of the world, is already rolling back a lot of these restrictions. In fact, Doug Ford, who's the premier here in Ontario, announced that today, saying that it was not because, but in spite of the trucker. But regardless, like why this was handled this way by Trudeau and his government, it seems absolutely, it's flabbergasting.
Right, because he's behaving like a king, and he doesn't like when people refuse to do what he says. But you mentioned the Ontario premier rolling back the COVID restrictions, and then how he said, well, we didn't do it because of the truckers protesting, which is laughable.
I mean, whether it is or it isn't, right? I mean, you now see on sort of Canadian television politicians saying things along the lines of, well, now we can't roll back the mandates or it's going to look like we buckled to pressure. So apparently, suddenly politics are fine to involve in these conversations. Maybe the most ironic moment of this press conference was when one of Trudeau's ministers assured the people that these measures would only be temporary. To your point, that sounded awfully familiar.
Right. We're only going to exert this authority that we really don't have until we feel like stopping. And again, these truckers are, where's the praise? Where are the thank yous for these men and women who kept us fed and made sure our stores were stocked with necessities, even when we didn't know how deadly COVID was, when there wasn't a vaccine? Where's the thank you?
I think that's long forgotten, Dagan. I think that when praising the truckers was politically expedient, Trudeau was happy to do it. Now it's not.
Dave Marcus, be well. Keep us posted. Come back Always great to see you, Dave Marcus. New York Post,
Thank you.
Fox News.